We'll make David cry next.
Yeah.
Go, David.
Let's make David cry. I'm pulling up mine too.
The two people most out of touch with their emotions. Just
You think of our life process, you're born and then you just constantly keep separating and you keep pushing away and you're learning through that. But then there comes a point in time, and what DreamWork really helps with is that you start to reclaim those parts of yourself that you've been pushing away from so violently.
The big hormone Enneagram.
I'm John Legovich, 415, sexual self-pres, 458 Trifix.
I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual, 9 with 1 wing, 974 Trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I'm a 3-wing 4, self-pres social, a 369 Trifix.
Hi, I'm Alexandra. I'm a social self-preservation 9-wing 1, 963 Trifix.
If you like or hate us, make sure you go like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you leave us a review. I try not to put too positive of a spin on things because I have a really bad habit of being just kind of shoving the emotions to the side and be like, well, this happened, so it's okay. But one thing that is pretty cool is we said if we ever did move back, we wanted to accomplish feeling like we can move back to Richmond and feeling like we really tried. Mm-hmm. And it's I think we did that. And now I'm a bit ready to make Richmond my home, which I don't think I've ever been ready to do. So, wow. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and even too, just the different aspects of your dream point a lot to your ideas of competency. What is failure? Sure, if you want to say you failed, that's okay. But then, what does failure even mean to you? And why does it have to be a bad thing? Because you think of just I'm going to be a 9 and it's the natural laws or everything's going to fail at some point. It's not good or bad, it is just is. So the fact that it's your associations with failure and with achievement and with value, what you value versus what you don't, all of that too can be that head space area of associating with things that needs to start to change or transform into something more
or be
actually valuable. Or you could do that. Whatever operates, because then once you're decapitated, you're left with the heart and the body, so it's working with what feels right in those areas. That makes sense.
It does.
This I was gonna say that I had a big traveling bug in my 20s. There was this sort of anger that I was sort of trying to exercise, sort of get away from home, because get the fuck away from these people. And I traveled a lot, and eventually I realized that I started to create another home elsewhere, and I started to see that it took 4 months for me to realize it's not that different from where I was coming from, because I was kind of trying to run away from myself in a sense of I associate my parents with Chicago and the Midwest, and and so once I did all this traveling, I sort of saw that it's still me in some other country. I'm still going to find my own version of those friends in that other country. I'm going to find my favorite restaurant or whatever. You have to start over, and some things that you hate about where you're from are going to be replaced by, a whole nother set of problems, or even things that you love. So it's I stopped romanticizing traveling, and it made me sort of realize how many things that I've been running away from that I associate with how much I hate my parents, and so, I think it's just a good, experience for you to actually get out there, and maybe you see home differently now that you've tried to make a new home somewhere else. Even if it would have worked out, I think you might even have a different relationship if you would have lived there for a while, with home, just to see like, yeah, there's some things that are great, but you know, home takes on a different idea once you've been away for a while.
Yeah, and we made a lot of comments about like how the same people are everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same everywhere. Right. They just speak a different language.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think one thing that is really hard for me to like look at is like I thought I had done enough work where I didn't feel the need to run away. I was like, no, this isn't running away. And I think looking back, I'm like that one's really hard for me to just look at. Like,
yeah,
it feels real icky.
Oh, Alexandra, I'm going to continue to run away from Tampa.
You should always run away from Florida. Florida's never on that.
I mean, I'm a 9. I had the opposite problem. I had to be ripped out of home by God himself.
Yeah, you did.
I had to have my car totaled and, basically priced out.
Wrecked.
Yeah.
And we need to teach you to
God
hate your
had
parents.
to come and pluck me from the womb himself. Don't worry. I know I didn't run away.
You had to have a car crash to get you out of fucking Florida.
Yeah.
You had to basically be ejected out of Florida.
Yes.
Violently, like a virus.
Yes, the universe itself was like, you're taking too long, bitch. Hurry up.
I've told you this for 10 years. God damn.
No more napping.
Yeah. No more napping.
Not to bring it back to dreams or anything, but
that's also why you're here, so you're allowed to do
it. Okay. I mean, one of the things that I've learned through dream work and is basically obviously apparent why people get very emotional is that like you think of our life process is kind of, you're born and then you just constantly keep separating and you keep splitting off and you keep pushing away and you're learning through that. But then there comes a point in time, and what dream work really helps with is that you start to like reclaim those parts of yourself that you've been pushing away from so violently. Like, so it's sometimes like really seemingly silly things like I feel, incompetent, or I miss this part of my life, or whatever it may be. Like I want to love the way that I did when I was 2 years old and, saw a cat for the first time, whatever it may be. Like dream work can help you start to call those feelings back that you have split off and pushed away from for a long time.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
So who's next? Batter up.
Yeah, who's next?
Who wants to cry next?
Yeah, so come on.
Well, David was just preparing a dream.
Oh yeah, David had a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. David's next.
Right.
He said he had a big dream from the last. So
on the last pod, did you keep that in where I said there's going to be this dream?
Yeah, I did. Reveal? I did keep it in.
I kind of have to.
So yeah, you have to do it.
Trying to see if I've got an out here.
You never have an out with us.
Yeah.
Whether you said it or not, we are holding you to it.
Okay.
We'll make David cry next.
Yeah.
Go, David.
Let's make David cry. I'm pulling up mine too.
The two people
I have,
most out of touch with their emotions. Just
yeah, I didn't have a recent one, but I was going to do this dream that's it's one of the most powerful dreams I've had that, left an impression. Well, I still remember it after, over 25 years. So, let's see, man, I'm terrible at telling stories in context. So
come on, David, blast.
Okay.
Blast last.
Pull together, David.
Yeah.
Coalesce.
Yeah, coalesce into one location. There I go. Let's see. So,
Pat yourself, feel your feet.
She mocks me.
This is the stuff nobody gets to hear. Like, you have no idea how incompetent we are as a podcast.
Yeah. Okay, so so not to get serious or anything, but this was within the year after my mother died. My mother died when I was 25. Around that time, I was seeing a girl who, I mean, we were kind of fuck buddies, I guess. At least that's what it was in my mind. I think she wanted more, of course.
I'm shocked.
Cutting this.
Yeah,
This is not new. This is
this is not a new trend.
This was last month, actually.
Yeah. One thing that was interesting about her is, I mean, and it's a theme in the dream, or I think it's a central aspect of, whatever's in the dream symbolically. But my situation, as many know, is I grew up with my mother, never met my father. Her situation is the reverse. She grew up with her father, never met her mother at all. So, and she's a 6 and I'm a 9. So we're 69, right? So, and anyway,
very important.
And that's actually what happened in the dream. Was we were meeting. It happened, I don't know, somewhere between like 4 to 6 times. We were going to some house, some small house somewhere. It wasn't mine, it wasn't hers. And we would have sex, and it was really good. And 69 was an aspect of what was happening here. And so at that same, in real life, around that same time period, I was working for this wealthy family doing errand boy type stuff. And one thing that they had on their back door screen, it was like a double screen, and there was a lizard that was trapped there. It was dead. But so that same theme was at the house that this woman and I were meeting at. That there was a lizard that I'd notice every time I was leaving, and the lizard was alive but barely moving, and as each time that I went to the house in the dream and I left, the lizard was getting darker and darker, like turning sort of finally like an ashen, dark gray color. And the thing that ended the dream was me realizing, I think it was realizing that the lizard was dead. Now this final time it wasn't moving at all. And just as that happened, as the screen door is closing, I hear a sound of a creature, a being in the walls of the house that's like, I can tell it's trapped within the walls of the house. And it lets out a sound that was the most horrifying, jolting sound I've ever heard in my life. And it was a combination of pain, grief, anger, rage, just unexpressed raw emotion. And the sound told me what the creature looked like, and it's impossible to describe, but it was generally human-like, but very amorphous and strange and bizarre. You know what I mean? Just non-human. And so it let out this sound, and that's what woke me up from the dream. And it was, it was just that sound alone is what kind of imprinted the dream for me, because it was, I'd never heard anything like that, and it's impossible to describe, but that just made the whole thing stick. So, yeah. And I don't know if this is maybe relevant, but, one of the things about this woman is there was one time in real life, at her place when she could see, this is, again, shortly after my mother's death. And at a certain point, I've told you guys this before, I think, but like 6 or 8 weeks after my mother died, for 6 to 8 weeks, I was really upset. Tears, anxiety, pain, da-da-da-da-da. And then it all just kind of shut down it wasn't like trying to repress anything. It all just stopped. And so I was in that phase, I guess you'd say, of where it had just cut off. And I went to her place one time, and she was on her knees. I don't know the whole build up to this, but I'm sitting in a chair at her place, and she's on her knees on the floor, crying, trying to get me to connect back into the grief and the pain. And, I was being really cavalier about it and just like, oh man, why are we doing this right now? You know what I mean? I at the same time, I appreciated it. I understood kind of what she was doing, and it really was beautiful what she was trying to get me to come back into. And she was kind of, it was a real act of will on her part to say, hey, come back to this. You know what I mean? This is major. And it's partly that she was imagining her father dying, and that was part of what she was saying, that would, she would just be completely broken up. Right. And so anyway, so that's pretty much it.
Gee, that's haunting.
Yep.
Wow. I think I'd want to ask more specifically, like, what exactly was, I know you explained about like grieving and then it kind of stopping, but other than that, like maybe what kind of mindset you were having either in like with that job, because it was specifically that kind of lizard and with the door and everything. Like, was there any kind of attitude or mindset that you had at that time that maybe felt particularly like relevant?
Mindset relative to that job, the errand boy thing,
and just around that time that you had the dream too, that it would link to that specifically.
Well,
I don't know if maybe the act of leaving that job because of it being the door while you're leaving it. I don't know.
Yeah. It was a wealthy family, and they did, okay, here's part of the backdrop of all of that. The daughter was about 10 years older than me. So she was in her mid-30s, married at a different house, right? Mm-hmm. And she was the one that hired me. So I was working for both families, switching days, going back and forth between the two. And she's actually a Jungian analyst and was all into Jung and stuff. And she was at my mother's deathbed on the night my mother died. So, because we had gotten to be close friends pretty quickly because we were into all the Jungian mumbo jumbo. And so I kind of, because of that connection with her, and her name was Susan, by the way, and so was the girl that I was, my fuck buddy was Susan too. So there's a connection there. And I think because they were wealthy and I'm self-pres and I've got a 9/7 fix, I was thinking these people are just going to take me in, right? And I'm going to not have to do shit, right? Everything's going to be wonderful, right? They're just going to give me money. It's going to be great.
9/7.
That's how life works, actually.
What's that?
That's how life works.
It's got to be realistic. So anyway, yeah. So what did you ask? I don't remember the question now.
Just I'm kind of glad that you brought up just something about self-preservation, because the fact that this voice and this creature of some kind was living in the walls is very self-preservation-esque.
Yeah.
You know, because you think of the walls of a building being, enclosing, the walls are our boundaries, stuff like that. So I wondered if maybe it had something to do with like your own self-preservation instinct wanting to express this kind of pain and grief and anger and whatever, and it's like trapping itself, if that makes sense. Like there's something there that like the ego setup of the wall of self-preservation is actually fucking itself up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, self-pres, of course, was a big part of, what was up, because I had been living with my mother when she died, and so now I'm suddenly alone, having to make it on my own. I don't have any siblings, or I've got a couple of cousins that live in other states or whatever, but point being, I don't have any kind of, at that point, backup, self-preservationally. There was it was the terror of, you're a fucking orphan on the streets kind of feeling. It's like I'm a rat scurrying to survive, and there's nowhere to go.
Right. And that's why I wonder, like, if the grieving of your mom was, like, quite obviously felt, but then it's stopping, like, there's something more that needed to be grieved in a way. But it wasn't quite just about your mom. It was also about this whole other aspect, maybe, that you weren't quite sure how to express, because, our egos don't let us in that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure where to go with it, though.
Yeah, because, I mean, you could also look at, too, the aspect of the lizard, like, if you have any associations with it other than leaving that house and it being in the door, something being dead, something completely losing its color, because you said it kind of turned, like, to ashes, which is kind of very, like, Phoenix-esque, too. That's specifically ashes. Yeah,
I mean, it went from, green to, and just was getting darker each trip to that house.
Yeah, so that aspect of time slowly kind of crumbling and dying. Something about, like, because that lizard is a part of yourself, too, that is crumbling and dying and resorting to ashes. So I think you could look into the, like, I don't have anything on me right now. I'm not going to go running, grab my books for lizards, but there's tons of symbolism around it.
Sure.
I mean, it is a very, like, 974 kind of figure in general.
Sure.
And then with the person that you were with, I mean, it kind of does feel very just self-pres sexual in general, based off of, like, everything that was even going on. But to me, I would see that as more of, like, okay, here you are in self-preservation sexual mode, and there's this other thing that's happening that is trying to cry out and trying to get attention, and you're wanting to, like, the ego in the dream wants to be putting focus on what it normally does during the day, whereas there's something else, and especially for it to be a creature, like, this is a shadow that is so kind of dehumanized that you don't even know how to relate to it. Kind of what I've mentioned with social blind showing up in dreams is that there's a lot of, like, weird creatures or faceless things, because it's not understanding the importance of what that aspect of yourself could give you.
Yeah, I mean, that the sound, that creature in the wall, is very much, although it was, extremely emotional and so forth, it was very much that faceless, kind of non-personality kind of entity. Just purely, primordial pain, hurt, anger kind of stuff, fear. No.
Do you think that it could have been linked at all to like social? Is that at a time in your life where like the social instinct just was totally like in the shadow?
Well, it's always been in the shadow. Yeah, I mean, at that point, I didn't. Yeah, I had no connection to social instinct. So, it was again another aspect of 9/7. It was, just wanting to escape with sex and physical pleasure, etc. And trying to avoid kind of what that creature in the walls represented. Yeah.
It's also like the loss of family. She was the only real
That's
family
true.
you had.
Yeah, see, I said it before. My mother's was SPSX also, and a 174. So me as an attachment type, I'm absorbing and adapting to more SPSX-ness, you know what I mean? More social blindness. So that's why I'm the master SPSXer, right? Because I still sort of don't know what family is. And when I think of, for example, having a sibling even, that just is, it's actually like ick. I don't want that. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels, just somehow mortifying to have siblings. So, yeah, pretty disconnected from social.
If I were to take a guess at this from Enneagram standpoint, it was kind of like your mom was the only person in your life who like didn't require social from you, but still gave you that. Still like gave you that fix.
Yeah, I mean, there was some stuff that was social about her. I mean, she was very involved with people, even though she was social blind. I mean,
everyone has some social.
Yeah. But she was, she, for example, in her, mid-30s or whatever, moved to Washington, D.C. to go work on Capitol Hill to go change the world, right? Wow. And she was working for senators and stuff like that. And, JFK and LBJ were senators at that point, just right upstairs from her, and they'd sometimes come down and have a drink in the same office she was working and stuff like that. So, I mean, she was, it's kind of that 1-7 thing where it's like, we're going to do big things. We're going to do big, radical reform, big ideas, interesting stuff, and she got disillusioned with Washington, but she was always doing things with groups of people, embarrassing me and herself often, but because she's social blind, just in that special way that SPSX especially is just ruins social events. But
impressively
anyway,
good at it. Not speaking from experience.
Yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway,
no, me neither.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have something more?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I thought you were asking Nancy.
The other Kristen that's here.
No.
I mean, I feel like there is so much, because you could even look at like the concept of sound and why specifically it chose sound over anything to reach you in that way. It makes me think of just 9 in general. And I guess I ask social, like, what about social in that time period, because of it also, like, you say you're in a house, but it's not yours or the person that you're with. So again, this concept of home, like what are you doing in there if it's not yours and or hers? And I've noticed with self-pres dominant, whether it's self-pres social or self-pres sexual, that like self-preservation is a huge wall. And so to have that specifically be in, like, there's life in this wall that is like crying out is what I am immediately drawn to, at least. And why I would mainly say like there was probably something with the self-preservation instinct that was preventing you from feeling a certain way or preventing you from either reaching social or whatever it may be.
One thing too is because of my Trifix, probably, I hadn't pursued any kind of real self-pres grounding, you know what I mean? Or done any of the stuff that like Nancy would do, you know, like go get a university degree so she can have a job and do all the dumb stuff, you know? Right? Like, I just
you laugh at me when I tell you my plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I was my 7-4 STEM. I'm exempt from all that shit, right? You know, and it took me actually. So my mother died when I was 25. I mean, this is type, right? I mean, it took me until my mid-30s before I even started to try to build any kind of solid self-pres thing, because I always thought there was going to be some magic, something was going to happen, right? Just, and my self-pres was, you know, up until that point, just all about sensual pleasure and, you know, food or whatever, and some sexuality, maybe, you know,
Maybe.
Yeah, no. So there's possibly an aspect of the creature in the wall being actually also somewhat neglected in a certain way, in terms of, especially in terms of some of the realism of what self-pres is supposed to be about, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Just as like a commentary,
Yes.
the creature in the wall, that gave me the heaves.
Yeah.
Oh, it was
And
bad.
I
It was so
I
bad.
listen to like murder and haunted podcasts all day long, and that gave me like full body heaves. Like can't sit still, full body heaves.
Yeah, that's nightmare.
Yeah.
Literally, I can't even. So just honoring the fact that that's fucking terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, too, even talking about your dreams and having other people listen. Like you can,
Yeah.
you know, they're empathizing with what you're saying, even if you're kind of like desensitized to it at that point.
That's true.
Yeah, but also too, just even looking at like, I don't know, does anyone here know facts about lizards? Because even just that aspect of you like dying too, I mean, I think of them just being like pretty cold and mechanical and alone and stuff like that.
It is kind of SPSX-ish, that just kind of, disconnect. They're very not, exactly. Not social creatures. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because animals will represent some kind of instinct within you. And so rather than getting too crazy with the symbolism of animals, just even looking practically at what they do, like what are their qualities, what are they typically known for, and then what is happening in the dream to them. So the fact that this is kind of fading out.
So this was also one of those lizards that, you know, in normal circumstances changes colors. You know what I mean? It was one of those.
Oh, like a chameleon?
Yeah. And so, so it's interesting that the color changing that was happening in the dream was, you know, as opposed to the sort of vibrant kind of color changing that you imagine a lizard being near a certain color flower or whatever, and then it changes towards that color. This was just changing towards death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that color change in chameleons happens due to an outside stimuli.
Mm,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
perfect. I mean, I could spend more time on this, but I don't know if that hits something for you or not. Usually a dream would, like when you're interpreting it and someone says something, it would typically hit something for you that feels right or doesn't. So
Well, which aspect of what you said are you wondering?
it's all of it, everything
Okay.
we've talked about so far.
What's your location?
She's just asking for a reaction in general, any reaction.
Yeah.
What day of the
I'm
week
just-
is it?
yeah.
Where am I?
Are you here?
I'm dying, turning dark gray. Let's see.
Ashy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's any fresh hits.
He's got to
There.
find himself first before
Yeah.
he can know if it hits.
Yeah.
Let us know 3 months from now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
John, do you want to do like
Did I do one? I didn't do one.
Well, you did kind of like one about the ladies or something. I don't think you actually know. You
Oh,
didn't
right.
do
Yeah. No, I just, reacted to themes
Yeah.
that come up in my dreams.
John cheating on you, that whole thing.
Yeah, that was one.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
That minor,
About that.
no big
The
deal.
ladies.
Don't remind her,
Yeah.
or I'll be in trouble for a long time.
Yeah, I was just going to say my body just got hot in response to that. It's like, oh, mad.
Oh,
I mean, I have, we kind of started working on it if we want to just, do we want to just record this one? I have it like written out and it's all together and stuff like that. Kristen, it's one that we started kind of dissecting in the group already.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so this one is from February 3rd, so this is 3 nights ago. Okay, and I'm basically narrating because I have it written out, so enjoy my voice.
Ready.
I walked into a subway car with my sister, and we sat across from each other. There was a guy with a backpack that walked in, and he started talking to a group of us that were sitting down like on the subway. He handed each of us a short, sharpened knife, but was very unclear about what he expected everyone to do with them. So I looked around at everyone, and they had already begun to start slicing a line down from the top of their middle finger down to the top of their palm, and then were licking the blood. I was surprised to see my sister doing the same thing. This is kind of ad-libbing here, but it's because, like, I know her internal place, and she just wouldn't go along with that. Like, she's pretty sensitive and squeamish, and, can really dig her heels in for no reason. So I was surprised to see her doing that. Then I tried to make myself do the same thing, but I couldn't push the blade in deeply enough, and barely any blood came out. I remember feeling nervous that I would stick out for this, but no one, including the kid that gave us the knives, seemed to notice much or care at all. I remember wondering how to get my sister and I out of this situation discreetly when 2 police officers walked in. The boy with the knives started talking to the police officers, and the rest of us just casually walked out. Later, I don't remember if I stopped dreaming at this point, but it was just later. Okay. Later, I'm walking out of the subway station alone, and I quickly try to pass a man who I assumed was going to ask me for money. He catches sight of me and walks up to me, and I remember freezing, but then remember I still have the knife in my pocket. Another shorter man approaches me too. At this point, they're both staring at me, and I'm very still, holding the knife in my pocket. Then the dream literally fades to black, and I wake up.
I loved that one.
Mine aren't usually I don't have very long dreams, or at least I haven't been remembering very long dreams.
Mhm.
But they have gotten progressively longer since I've been a
Yeah.
bit more aware of them.
Well, I asked a little bit about who your sister is, what she means and stuff like that. Because siblings in our dreams are some of our biggest shadows, because they're we've projected so much on them for so long. So for her to be with you, is something that I think you mentioned her kind of just going with the flow, doing
Yes.
whatever.
My sister, yes. She's also a Bermuda. And the history between my sister and I is that we were always kind of in it together as far as like attachment stuff goes. We're like, we will attach together, and we are like going to support each other in our games with our parents that we just have to do.
Right.
And then, a few years ago, we started to kind of separate. We started to disagree more overtly because of it. And, we're good now, but that was definitely there was definitely a fork that we both walked in opposite directions.
Mm-hmm. Because I think the other questions that I had, because I asked, I know you said a little bit about you were doing some discoveries about your OPS typing. Mm-hmm. And I asked, like, what, maybe you have it pulled up, like, what FE kind of means to you. Okay, cool. What that means to you, because I wondered if you're the kind of person that really internalizes other people's pain.
I do. Yes. Okay. Your question is, well, I'll just answer what you just asked me. I would say that I do. I don't have like, I don't know how to explain this. I don't have it in like a sort of a two sense of like, I'm going to fix your problem and it's going to make me feel amazing about myself or something, however that works. But I more have a thing that like, I do kind of feel that the pain of people that I care about is my responsibility, because it will take me down also if I don't take care of it.
Right. I always like to pay attention to like hands and specific locations of the body and stuff. And I noticed that the middle finger is associated with Saturn. And I think you said about having a Saturn ruled chart, and what does that really mean to you? Because for it to be so specific.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
So let's see. Yeah, finding out my chart is ruled by Saturn. Some of the natural associations I have to it is Saturn is like pretty austere, but it also rules restriction as well as insecurity, as well as like very high standards for self. And where it's positioned in my chart is in my first house. And of the literature that I've read, a lot of like first house Saturn placements just spend the first half of their life just like basically coming down on themselves for not being up to an externally assigned standard. So I do very much heavily relate to that and think I'm kind of working my way through that door. There's more to it. Saturn is also, the way I understand it, is it's the ruler of discernment, which is a sort of like trust I'm developing my trust with my ability to have strong discernment and then act on it. Mm-hmm. I do feel like I've always had it, but I've always kind of kept it, to myself.
Can I add a few things?
Mm-hmm.
Alexandra's okay?
Yeah.
Well, just, like one of the ways that I see you relating to Saturn is certain kind of seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that you and I joke about, or like have it as a not a joke, but a thing between us, is being very serious people. And even if we play and have humor, so like that's just like, I guess what I heard when you were sort of speaking about it was more like things that you're like coming to terms with versus like things that you just feel about yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of Saturn is stuff you already feel about yourself, and it's not like lessons you're yet to learn. It's like things you already got.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, because again, too, starting off on a subway, I think I also asked about like what do you normally associate with that? Like, how are you on subways? Why would the dream specifically put you on there? Like, I know at least for me that being a 9, I can never really turn off what I'm picking up from other people. So I don't know if you're kind of a person that when you're on the subway, if you just either are typically to yourself and keep to yourself, or are you like constantly checking or not being able to turn off that like ability to notice what other people are feeling or experiencing?
So I'm on the subway every day, twice a day, heading to work and then heading back. And I have gotten into a habit where it's just very automatic and very autopilot for me at this point. Just get on and I can just like zone out and know when to come to in order to like leave and transfer. But at the same, this is like during the day when it's not, I don't know, for some reason, the fact that it's like busier makes it less scary for me. But there are times where every now and then some like wacko gets on and I'm very tense the whole time because I wonder if this is going to be like the headline story that I'm on.
It's a fear.
Yeah, like is
Puerto
this going to
Rican
be
girl
like...
gets decapitated on the subway.
Yeah. And, you know, it's like there's so many weirdos in New York that come up to you for random reasons. Some of them are harmless. Some of them are not scary. Some of them are scary. And I just never know what the combination is going to be. So there is kind of like a numbed, well, I try to numb, but there's still, I guess there still always is kind of an awareness.
Yeah, because I'm just looking at that, also looking at the idea of a subway car is like a container that takes you from one place to another. So this kind of it feels like a very like initiation rite going on in this dream. Like something is happening that like you have to submit to as well. Kind of similar with Nancy's dream. Like it's asking you to feel this thing or do this thing, whatever. Looking at specifically it being a knife as well, because knives or swords or whatever often deal with thought and the mind. It being delivered by a man is also masculine thought. And the kind of association too with knives is, or the double-edged sword. Like that, when you talk about discernment, that's kind of like where the idea of knives is that there's always two sides to it. So this ability to discern, and how that kind of plays in with your feelings. Because it just feels like in the dream there's such strong emotional tone of panic and pain, and understanding where that pain is coming from and why everyone else is experiencing it and now you have to. Just feels like there's some kind of process going on in your psyche that is trying to identify like where this is coming from, where it's going.
And a bit of synchronicity, Alexandra's dad calls her and her sister Pain and Panic.
Yeah, it's from the Disney movie Hercules.
I just thought that was funny that you hit that. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Pain. Yeah, Isabel's Panic.
And that's why I would try to like associate like what that really means to you, especially for the ending of the, well, again, you have another police officer, I think. What exactly was that part again? Sorry.
That as I was thinking of how I'm trying to get my sister and I out of the situation, two police officers walk in, and the guy that has the knife just walks up to them and starts talking. And as they're talking, everyone just kind of like, okay, I guess we're going to go now. And just trickle out.
Right.
Like bloody hands, knives still in hand. Like this shouldn't be an easy, we shouldn't be so easily let go. And yet we were.
And that's, I love how like the unconscious will always give you such like a ridiculous scenario. And everyone is just like, yeah, it's fine. And you're the only one freaking out about it, which is usually why then like there's something that your ego is freaking out about. And it's being shown to you in this way because it's trying to get you to understand like where the freak out is actually happening in real life. And then I think like for it to end on kind of a cliffhanger as well, is like your mind isn't entirely made up about this idea or this part of your psyche. I don't know if you were going to say something.
No. Just breathing. Yeah.
Just
something about the not being made up makes me anxious for some reason.
Maybe you want to look at that specifically then.
Yeah. Like I don't know.
More dreams came tonight.
Well, I mean, and that's I don't know if like the idea of holding other people's pain and that discernment process and that seriousness, like if that's kind of hitting specifically somewhere for you, like either currently or when you had this dream, like if those emotions are happening somewhere in reality, that's kind of where you'd want to focus most of your attention on. as to like what the dream could be pointing towards.
Yeah. It's hard to say because I think it's always been a theme for me. I think with people that I end up, very close to, I always feel kind of responsible for their, for their like regulation. Yeah. Can you say what you were saying again? Like, so that I can like think about it again. Like, where is this showing up more personally, I guess?
Yeah, like, because the feeling tones, there's a lot going on that we can link these symbols to a lot of things, obviously, in your life that you've experienced, and but the feelings in the dream are pertaining to something going on currently. So this sense of like panic, this sense of responsibility, stuff like that. I don't know if when you were talking about understanding your OPS type more or something, if anything of that came up. It would be something around that.
Yeah, with the OPS stuff. Oh, that's right. Okay, because I was telling you that this stream happened after like a really good download of some like just some like OPS kind of insights downloads that I had based on my type, and it was this over prioritizing of FE, I guess, or whatever. It's just kind of making sure that everybody's regulated around me, but that this has been a priority for me at the cost of my own regulation, like me giving that to myself rather than giving it to someone else in hopes that it'll get back to me that way. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure where to go from there. I'm trying to remember even what I said.
I think you were mainly saying about like how much you've realized that your time has been spent on other people rather than yourself, which felt pretty obvious in the dream itself because of everyone experiencing this kind of collective pain, and you just think, oh yeah, I gotta do it too. And your sister even being someone that you've kind of described as always going through things together, there could be some kind of shadow aspect of her that would help you in understanding that, like a quality that maybe you'd get kind of angry about and try to push away from yourself that she might have, that you aren't willing to admit that you have too, that basically puts you in these circumstances. So looking at that might help. And also too, I just want to point out like the idea of it being like licking blood, because blood is life force in a way. I know your all like faces are just gross, but like it's life force, so it's like like this is kind of like feeding you in a way, or feeding the collective in a way. And so understanding where that's playing out, breaking it down like that, and the ending being as it was, would really help with trying to see where exactly your psyche is trying to move. Like, why does the ego go along with this? Why does it panic when everything's seemingly fine? And where does that want to take me next? Because like a subway car is going to take you somewhere that you weren't previously.
Yeah, because there is, I had been thinking about it for, I guess just like the preceding days after having that dream. I remember there was a lot of energy, and I think I mentioned this already, but there was a lot of energy around feeling like I also had to cut my finger down and there had to be enough blood. So like I was nervous that it just wasn't happening, and there like wasn't enough blood, and everyone else was like, this was all happening for everyone else in like a very splashy kind of dramatic way. So I was nervous that the attention was going to be on me because I was not like with everybody in the same thing, and it just wasn't happening for me. Despite trying. So yeah, I don't know what that.
I mean, that just immediately I think of, because of it sounding very like initiation.
Yeah.
It could be like your thoughts and feelings about like everyone else maybe figuring something out that you haven't, like whether it be about type or whether it be about in life, feeling somehow like you aren't doing enough or you aren't getting enough out of something, whereas everyone seems like they are. that kind of pressure that you put on yourself feels pretty strong, I think, with the imagery like being depicted in that way. It feels kind of to like attachment. With triple attachment, it is a lot of like, okay, what's everyone else doing, and why doesn't what I'm doing look like that, or why doesn't it feel like that?
I remember something from your OPS typing video. Towards the end, you said that something that you judge yourself for is that you see other people being able to be loose socially, and that you don't think that you don't see yourself able to do that. You're such a serious person. And so like the Saturn ruled, that finger representing Saturn, and everyone's cutting it to get the life force. And you're not sure if you could do that. I think that's maybe pointing to that.
Right.
Underlying, you're judging yourself for your inability to let go of your, serious, standards and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that tracks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, with that, hang on, my headphones just did something weird. With that too, just this idea that I'm kind of seeing everyone else as having something that I don't have already. Another kind of download that's come up for me lately is just feeling, okay, let me get my emotions right here. Okay.
Oh God. Let it out.
No, Kristen, no.
She wants you to be crying.
Yes. This is a fun podcast. Okay.
No, it's not.
Loosen up.
No, it's not.
Confirm. It's not a fun podcast.
Cut the middle finger and bleed.
Bleed with us, Alexandra.
I want to lick it.
Lick the blood.
Yeah, for real. Okay. So it's another part of like a kind of recent download that I've been processing for like the past couple of days is just the feeling of grief over the consequence of not having invested time in myself. A feeling like I put it into my parents, into my sister, into my friends, into my relationships, into, I guess just like the people in my immediate vicinity that I feel like need me. And that the consequence of this has been feeling like I don't have much to my own name. And yeah, I guess just like a grief over just having wasted a lot of time. And I guess what I mean by this is I feel like had I spent my time just diving into my own interests and my own passions and my own kind of like frivolous pursuits or whatever, then I would have sort of a body of work by now that I could be proud of, or like an expertise that I could feel I really have. Yeah, and I guess just like if we're relating it back to the blood, that maybe no blood came out because I don't feel like I have any.
Or I was even thinking too, the kind of force that it really takes to puncture, skin and everything. It could be that you feel as if you are too weak to even make that split and make that puncture, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that feels right to me too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a kind of split in my whole life where sometimes I'm like, I've wasted too much time, it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a feeling of what if I don't have what it takes to like, really do something and like have a real impact and be like a real voice. Yeah, that is.
I also relate blood to the sexual instinct,
Yeah, and that's definitely come up, for me too.
A fiery water
Mm.
and sexual arousal, the blood is involved. And there's all kinds of associations there. So yeah, that could be representing difficulty contacting it.
Mm-hmm. Or difficulty even owning that power too, because it, like I say, it's like it takes force
Right.
Yeah, it takes force, it takes power to puncture your own hand in that way, especially the finger, like ow. But it's still like it, it does take a lot. And so for you to not, think that you have the capability of doing that.
And it relates into what you're saying there about grieving, not having focused on your own interests and the things that really turn you on,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I can't wait to
Yeah.
hear everyone's dream they have tonight. Too.
It's gonna be lit.
Yeah. It's going to be.
I just want to thank our guest Kristen because I will be nurturing my beloved's emotions for the rest of the evening.
Look,
Yeah,
you
thanks
could have
so much,
cried.
dude.
You could have cried here. We all could have held. We all could have held you.
No,
Oh,
that's
she's
my
gonna-
job.
Yeah, she's saving all of that for John.
Yeah, I really appreciate you making me cry on the podcast, dude.
Let me know if you don't want that to be broadcast.
No, put it in. People need to hear me cry. It's fine.
Oh,
It's raw.
Nancy, that's really cool.
All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you for coming. I'm very sleepy.
Same.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
we're glad that you're back, Nancy, so we don't have to meet at noon or
Yeah,
1
God.
o'clock every day. That
I
was
agree. You guys are way
sacrifice.
more fun in the evening. There's a big difference.
Yeah, there is. No, it was killing me. It was like, oh my God, I'm still not awake yet.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys putting in the effort, but this is way more fun.
Yeah.
All right. Peace,
Bye.
y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Kristen.
See ya.
Bye. Bye, guys.
I must admit on some occasions I went out like a punk in a chump or a sucker or something to that effect. Respect I used to never get, cause all I got was upset when niggas used to be like and try to sweat a nigga like the lip. For no reason at all I can't recall cause niggas rolling C's in my face. Down the hall kicking it in the back of the school eating chicken at 3. Wondering why's everybody always picking on me. I tried to talk and tell them, chill out, ain't nothing to this.